Good day from the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where at this hour, the Orbit 2 team of flight controllers on duty, working in concert with their Russian counterparts half a world away at the Russian Mission Control Center, which is located in Korolyov outside of Moscow. In the flight control rooms, both in Houston and in Korolyov, the countdown is being monitored for the launch coming up in just 19.5 minutes of the 48th Progress resupply vehicle to the International Space Station. You're looking at the Site 1 launch pad at Baikonur in Kazakhstan, where it is currently 1:16 in the morning on Thursday, August 2nd. The Progress 48 fully fueled as the fueling process began at about 9:30 Central Time this morning. The launch pad has been cleared of essential personnel, and everything is in readiness to send the Progress on a unique 4-orbit, 6-hour sprint to the International Space Station that will deliver almost 3 tons of food, fuel, and supplies for the Expedition 32 crew on the orbital outpost. This accelerated rendezvous is being planned by the Russians today to develop a rendezvous profile that may be applicable to manned Soyuz flights in the future. The rationale being that the 4-orbit, 6-hour plan that would have an accelerated rendezvous from the launch pad to the International Space Station would reduce the amount of time the crew would be confined in a Soyuz vehicle in the cramped confines of a Soyuz vehicle during a 2-day transit to the International Space Station, would also increase the normal post-undocking free flight life support margin from 2 days to 4 days if something untoward happened with the Soyuz vehicle following its undocking before a landing in Kazakhstan. It would also increase the ability to more rapidly deliver crew and supplies in a time-critical emergency, and in the event of a situation that would prevent a docking, would increase the time available for replanning a re-rendezvous and a second attempt to dock from a single day to 2 days. This accelerated rendezvous that is being attempted by the Russians today would have a docking this evening at 8:24 p.m. Central Time, 9:24 p.m. Eastern Time. The launching and docking of a spacecraft by the Russians is novel but not unprecedented. The Russians in the old days sent Soyuz vehicles to the Salyut space station in a single-day scenario. NASA launched Gemini spacecraft to rendezvous targets in the 60s to rehearse procedures that would ultimately be used in the Apollo program. Your lesson for orbital mechanics today to set the bit as far as how this will all work. The launch occurs at the precise moment that the Earth's rotation places the Baikonur Cosmodrome in the plane or corridor of the orbit of the International Space Station. Typically, that corridor or phase angle for a 2-day transit to the station would expand to up to 300 degrees, with the target of the International Space Station being up to 3/4 of the orbit ahead of the Progress itself at the time of liftoff. Today, to reach the space station in just 4 orbits or 6 hours, the phase angle at launch is just 30 degrees. Think of it as driving your car onto a highway, but entering a very narrow lane to reach your destination. At the time of launch, which is now just 16 minutes from now, the International Space Station will be flying 254 statute miles above eastern Kazakhstan near the Mongolian border, about 2,360 statute miles ahead of Progress. At the time of orbital insertion, about 9 minutes after launch, the International Space Station will be flying over Vladivostok, Russia. Typically, 2-day rendezvous to the International Space Station, there are 2 major rendezvous burns of the Progress or the Soyuz engines that occur within a few hours after launch. They're known as DV burns, or delta velocity burns, a DV1 burn and a DV2 burn. Those burns will occur at 3:16 p.m. and 3:39 p.m. Central Time today. A third such DV burn would take place the next day after launch, with a 4th burn 2 days later on the same day as a rendezvous. In this case, to reach the space station in just 6 hours, all 4 of these major rendezvous burns are being packaged in the first 2 hours and 40 minutes after launch. The Russian flight control team at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov will evaluate how those burns went, how precisely the progress is on target for a rendezvous this evening with the International Space Station, and if everything goes as planned, which is expected, they will press on for this 4-orbit, 6-hour rendezvous to docking, with the docking occurring this evening at 8:24 p.m. Central Time. If for some reason any of these burns don't meet the intended targets that the ballistics officers for the Russian flight control team are manning in the Russian Mission Control Center, they can still default up until about 6 p.m. Central Time to a standard 34-orbit rendezvous profile, which would have docking defaulting to late Friday afternoon. But everything is expected to go as planned, and we'll be following along as the day evolves today. Our second broadcast of the day, if everything goes normally, would begin this evening at 7:45 p.m. Central Time for a docking at 8:24 p.m. Central Time. The Russian flight control team on the next orbit after launch, or what is known as the second daily orbit, will be uplinking calculations to the onboard computer on the progress, making sure that the parameters of the 3rd and 4th of these DV or delta velocity burns are performed at the specific time that are required by the flight profile. The 3rd of those burns is planned for 4:39 p.m. Central Time today. The final burn at 5:10 p.m. Central Time. All 4 of those burns again packaged in the first 2 hours and 40 minutes after launch, with launch now scheduled just 13 minutes from now at 2:35 and 13 seconds p.m. Central Time, 1:35 and 13 seconds a.m. Baikonur time on Thursday morning. We're about to come up on the point of the countdown where the Progress gyros will be placed in flight readiness. Recorders will be activated. This is Site 1, or Gagarin's launch pad, the same pad from which Yuri Gagarin was launched to become the first human in space more than 51 years ago. It is called Site 1. The booster is a Soyuz booster, very similar to, not identical to, but similar to the Soyuz boosters that are used to launch the crews to the International Space Station. The next launch scheduled on October 15th of the next crew to the orbital outpost. Packed on board the Progress vehicle, 1,962 pounds of propellant, 110 pounds of oxygen and air, 925 pounds of water, and 2,817 pounds of dry cargo, maintenance hardware, resupply items, life support system items, and experiment hardware, for a total of 5,814 pounds of supplies and fuel for the International Space Station, just shy of 3 tons of cargo. Again, the accelerated rendezvous that is going to be executed over the next several hours to bring the Progress to a docking this evening with the Pirs docking compartment, made possible by the recent activities involving the 47 Progress vehicle, the old Progress vehicle that arrived at the International Space Station back in April. It undocked for the first time from the International Space Station on July 22nd, redocked 6 days later on July 28th to test an upgraded automated Kurs rendezvous system. The redocking of the Progress went as planned on Saturday. The commander of the International Space Station, Gennady Padalka, opened up the hatch on Sunday to the Progress 47, dismantled that upgraded Kurs rendezvous system. It is now stowed aboard the International Space Station, will be brought back to Earth on a subsequent resupply capability from a Dragon spacecraft that will be launched in the future, and it will be analyzed on the ground by Russian engineers to determine how well it worked. The Progress 47 undocked for the final time on Monday and backed away to a safe distance away from the station, where it continues to orbit the Earth and will do so for the next several weeks to enable Russian engineers to perform some engineering tests of its thruster system before it is finally deorbited to burn up in the Earth's atmosphere around August 20th. The Pirs docking compartment is the docking port of choice today for the Progress 48 that you see on your launch pad view from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, as we have gone inside 10 minutes to launch. The gantry was retracted about 20 minutes ago, exposing the Soyuz booster and the Progress 48 vehicle, which is enshrouded at the top of the third stage of the Progress. Aboard the International Space Station, the 6 crew members led by Commander Gennady Padalka, joined by NASA flight engineer Joe Acaba, Russian cosmonaut Sergei Revin, NASA flight engineer Sonny Williams, Yuri Malenchenko, and Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Aki Hoshide will be watching an uplink being sent to them of the launch. They are working in a split sleep shift today to accommodate tonight's activities. This evening at the time of docking, Padalka and Malenchenko will be at the controls in the Zvezda service module of the telerobotically operated, or TORU system, that would be employed if required in the unlikely event of a failure of the Core's automated rendezvous system to take over for a manual docking of the Progress to the Pirs docking compartment. This Progress vehicle is using the old style Core's system, not the new Core's NA that was tested on the Progress 47 activities that transpired over the past week or so. The countdown is now approaching the 8-minute mark to launch. Pre-launch operations at the pad are complete. In about 2 minutes, the vehicle will be placed on internal power. There are 2 ground umbilicals that are mated to the side of the Soyuz booster and the Progress spacecraft. The first of those 2 umbilicals will retract at T-minus 1 minute. The second of the 2 umbilicals will retract 15 seconds before launch, and that will initiate the engine start sequence. The engine turbo pumps will be run to flight speed, and then the command will be given for T0 at the launch at 2:35 and 13 seconds p.m. Central Time for Progress 48 to begin its expedited trip to the International Space Station. Again, the Progress launching into a very narrow corridor, a precisely calculated corridor to reach this altitude and this correct phase angle. Several weeks ago, the station conducted a reboost using the European Space Agency's automated transfer vehicle engines to reach an unprecedented altitude of over 252 statute miles, or more than 400 kilometers in altitude, and that placed the International Space Station in the right angle, the right phasing angle at the right altitude for the Progress to reach it today in this 4-orbit, 6-hour rendezvous scenario. The International Space Station, currently orbiting over the Caspian Sea, moving from southwest to northeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. Again, at the time of launch, 6.5 minutes from now, the space station will be flying over extreme eastern Kazakhstan near the Mongolian border. Now just 6 minutes until launch. The vehicle about to go onto internal power.
Есть сбросившего объекта.
It takes just short of 9 minutes from the launch pad to the preliminary orbit for the Progress vehicle. Once the third stage of the Soyuz booster shuts down, the spacecraft, the Progress, will separate from that third stage and within seconds deploy its navigational antennas and its solar arrays to begin acquiring electrical power from the sun and to begin again this expedited transit to the International Space Station. Once again, all four of the first major rendezvous maneuvers will take place jammed together, if you will, in the first 2 hours and 40 minutes of this flight in order to expedite the Progress's arrival at the International Space Station this evening to test an accelerated rendezvous profile that may soon be applicable to manned Soyuz launches. No timetable has been offered by the Russian Federal Space Agency for when that would occur. The proof of concept begins today with the launch of the Progress, now just 4.5 minutes from now. In less than 2 minutes, a nitrogen purge of the combustion chambers on the first stage of the Soyuz rocket will be accomplished, setting the stage for the propellant feed from ground systems to be terminated. Inside 4 minutes until the launch of Progress 48.
Протяжка 2. Есть протяжка 2, 70.
All flight recorders are now up and running as we approach the 3-minute mark until launch. And at this moment, the International Space Station is flying directly over the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Two minutes, 30 seconds until launch. About 45 seconds from now, the propellant tanks on the first stage will be pressurized, followed by the termination of the ground propellant feed to the vehicle.
Есть ГДМ блока И 70, есть надув общий 70.
Доклады принял первый.
The booster propellant tanks for the Soyuz booster now being pressurized. Coming up on the 1 minute, 30-second mark into the countdown. 90 seconds until launch. Spacecraft and the booster on internal power. The first of the two umbilicals should be retracting momentarily. And there's the first of the two umbilicals now retracting. The second umbilical will retract just seconds from now. and the launch command will be issued. T-minus 20 seconds. T-minus 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Turbo pumps at flight speed. And liftoff. Liftoff of the 48th Progress resupply ship on a 6-hour sprint to the International Space Station. The Soyuz booster lighting up the Central Asian desert. Pitch program is in. First and second stage thrusters operating normally according to reports from the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov. The vehicle is stable. Good pitch program. At the time of liftoff, the International Space Station was 2,360 miles ahead of the Progress. Pitch, roll, and yaw program all nominal. 70 seconds into the flight, the first stage will continue operating for about 1:58 seconds. The first stage then will shut down and separate along with 4 strap-on boosters at an altitude of 30 miles, while the vehicle is downrange at about 73 miles from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Everything operating normally. Good reports coming back from Korolyov. Standing by for solid rocket booster separation. And there's first stage shutdown and booster separation. The Soyuz booster in Progress 48, 30 miles in altitude, 73 miles downrange from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. About 20 seconds from now, the launch shroud around the Progress 48 will be jettisoned. Progress flying straight and true toward the International Space Station. And the launch shroud has been jettisoned as planned. That coming at an altitude of 52 miles, the rocket 102 miles downrange from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. The Soyuz booster flying on its second stage, liquid fuel. The flight is normal according to reports coming back from the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov. Still tracking the Soyuz booster as it heads downrange and heads uphill toward the International Space Station on a crystal clear night in Baikonur. All parameters are reported to be normal. 3 minutes, 48 seconds into the flight. The vehicle is reported stable. Second stage boosters performing normally. 4 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight. About 20 seconds left for the second stage. Structural parameters reported to be normal according to the reports coming back from the Russian Mission Control Center. 4 minutes 40 seconds into the flight.
Управление ракетоносителя в норме. 280. Прошел гарантийный наддув бака окислителя третьей ступени. 290. Есть запуск двигателя третьей ступени. Есть выключение двигателя.
The second stage has separated at an altitude of 103 miles, downrange from the Baikonur Cosmodrome, 179 statute miles. Third stage engines up and running.
310. Стабилизация.
The vehicle is reported to be stable and flying right down an exact path to the International Space Station.
320. Параметры конструкции ракетоносителя в норме. 330. Двигатель третьей ступени работает на...
Third stage boosters are performing normally.
340.
About 3 minutes of powered flight remaining for the Progress 48.
350. Полет нормальный. 360.
More than 6 minutes into powered flight, everything reported to be normal, with the Progress 48 atop the third stage of the Soyuz booster. Liftoff occurring right on the moment that was intended at 2:35 and 13 seconds p.m. Central Time, 1:35 and 13 seconds a.m. Baikonur time on Thursday, into a 30-degree phase angle
Ступени работает нормально.
to reach the International Space Station in 6 hours.
390. Параметры системы управления ракетоносителя в норме. 400.
The vehicle is stable, flying normally, almost 7 minutes into the flight.
410. Полет нормальный.
7 minutes, 10 seconds into the flight, about a minute and a half of powered flight remaining.
Рысканье, вращение в норме. 430.
The chase is on. Progress 48 heading for the International Space Station and an expedited docking this evening. The International Space Station is currently flying over eastern China, about to begin a northwest to southeasterly track that will carry it over northern Japan and over the North Pacific.
Полет нормальный.
7 minutes, 45 seconds into the flight, 1 minute of powered flight remaining, everything reported to be operating normally.
Ракетоносителя в норме. 470. Двигатель третьей ступени работает нормально.
The third stage engines are operating as advertised. Everything continues to go normally with the flight of the Soyuz booster and the Progress 48 resupply ship.
490. Стабилизация изделия устойчивая. 500.
8.5 minutes into the flight, just seconds away from third stage shutdown and spacecraft separation.
510. Тангаж, рысканье, вращение в норме. 520. Параметры системы управления в норме. 530. Есть выключение двигателя третьей ступени.
And third stage shutdown now confirmed by flight controllers of the Russian Mission Control Center, standing by for spacecraft separation. The vehicle now is separated, Progress 48 in its preliminary orbit, as we stand by for confirmation of navigational antenna and solar array deploy. And now confirmation that all antennas and solar arrays have been deployed. Progress 48 has begun its expedited flight to the International Space Station following a flawless launch and climb to orbit. At the time of orbital insertion, the International Space Station had just passed beyond the east coast of China over the North Pacific. And so this now sets the stage over the next 2 hours and 30 minutes for 4 major rendezvous burns called DV burns, or delta velocity burns, the first of which coming up at 3:16 p.m. Central Time, the second at 3:39 p.m. Central Time, the third, which typically takes place the day after launch for a normal 2-day rendezvous profile, to take place today at 4:39 p.m. Central Time, and the fourth and final major rendezvous maneuver at 5:10 p.m. Central Time. At that point, if everything has gone as planned, the Progress is committed to its 4-orbit, 6-hour expedited and accelerated rendezvous to the International Space Station that is expected to culminate with a docking this evening at 8:24 p.m. Central Time. One of the early tests ongoing at this moment is a checkout of the electronics of the CORS system on the unpiloted Progress resupply ship. This is a typical test that takes place shortly after orbital insertion to make sure everything is proceeding as planned. This is not the upgraded CORS system that we saw in operation for the recently undocked Progress 47 vehicle that is now a safe distance away from the International Space Station for several weeks of engineering tests before it is deorbited to burn up in the Earth's atmosphere over the Pacific. This is the old CORS system on this Progress 48 vehicle that will remain docked to the International Space Station until Christmas Day. You're looking at a view, in fact, from the Progress as it has just reached orbit. This telemetry is being sent back in an initial check of the electronics of the CORS system. Later on this evening, that will have a crosshaired engineering overlay, crosshaired target that you'll be watching as the Progress approaches for docking, its alignment for docking, and then the eventual docking to the Pirs docking compartment on the Earth-facing side of the Zvezda module of the International Space Station. So to recap, a flawless launch for the Soyuz booster carrying the Progress 48 resupply vehicle to the International Space Station. Launch again occurring on time at 2:35 and 13 seconds p.m. Central Time, at a point at which the International Space Station was flying just over 2,300 statute miles ahead of the launch pad at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Just shy of 9 minutes after launch, the Progress separated from the third stage of the Soyuz booster, entered its preliminary orbit. Its navigational antennas and solar arrays were deployed as planned to begin the accelerated trek for a docking this evening to the International Space Station. Coming up, the first of the 4 major rendezvous maneuvers called the DV-1 burn, or Delta Velocity 1 burn, that will take place a little less than 30 minutes from now at 3:16 p.m. Central Time. 4 major rendezvous maneuvers packed together in this accelerated rendezvous profile over the first 2.5 hours of flight of the Progress to bring it to a docking this evening at 8:24 p.m. Central Time. That'll wrap up our coverage of the launch of the Progress 48. We'll be back on the air about 5 hours from now at 7:45 p.m. Central Time, 8:45 p.m. Eastern Time, as the Progress completes its accelerated transit to the International Space Station for its docking to the Pirs docking compartment. So join us again this evening for the docking of Progress 48 to the International Space Station. In the meantime, we'll sign off. This is Mission Control in Houston.